That's terrible. I found out my wife was cheating with a younger guy from her company. I have been married to my wife for 7 years, and we had been together for 10 years before tying the knot. At 37, I felt I had built a stable and loving life with her. She, at 32, was not only beautiful and smart but also funny, and I took great pride in providing a good life for both of us. I worked hard, putting in between 40 to 60 hours a week, while she followed her passions as a part-time professor at a community college and as a yoga instructor. Our life together was full of love, laughter, and an active, healthy sex life. We shared dreams and built our home on trust and mutual respect. However, 4 months ago, everything changed in an instant. I was sitting alone, feeling the weight of a long day, when curiosity got the better of me. I started to look through my wife's email, a decision that would alter the course of our relationship forever. There, in a thread with a male name I did not recognize, I discovered emails that I could never have imagined. The emails contained explicit videos and sexually charged messages exchanged between my wife and this man. Each message and video brought a surge of emotions, anger, betrayal, confusion, and deep hurt that I struggled to contain. I remember feeling completely blindsided. I could not tear my eyes away from the videos, even though every frame filled me with pain. I had spent years building a life that I believed was strong and secure, and now I felt that everything was crumbling around me. The thought that the woman I loved and respected had chosen another man to share such intimate moments with was unbearable. In a mix of anger and sorrow, I packed my things and left the house, determined to confront her and sort through my emotions before I lost control. That very night, when I returned home, I confronted her with everything I had discovered. I dropped the bomb, and the moment the truth came out, she broke down in tears. In front of me, she admitted to the affair, sobbing and apologizing profusely. In that painful moment, I could see the regret in her eyes, but it did nothing to soothe the storm of emotions raging inside me. I told her I would find another place to stay, needing space to process the betrayal. As I left, she cried hysterically, begging me not to go, leaving countless messages on my phone saying she loved me and that this was the worst mistake of her life. For the next 2 weeks, I stayed at my brother's house, trying to make sense of my feelings while she tried to reach out to me nonstop. The pain and humiliation were overwhelming, and I could not escape the vivid images of the explicit videos that replayed in my mind. Despite the pain, as time passed, I began to miss her. The idea of our shared past and the love we once nurtured made me wonder if I could ever forgive her. Eventually, I returned home, and we decided to try and mend our broken relationship. I demanded answers. Why had she done it? How could she choose another man, especially one who was a 27-year-old professor working in her department at the college? Her answers were always the same. I don't know, or it just happened. Each time she said these words, the hurt deepened, and I began to question my own worth. I wondered if I was too weak, too inadequate, or if my performance in bed had driven her away. I could not shake the thought that maybe my physical shortcomings had led her to seek passion and excitement elsewhere. In an effort to regain my trust and to show her remorse, my wife came up with a plan. She promised to cut off all contact with the man and even offered to change jobs to distance herself from the temptation. She agreed to let me track her phone and car so that I would always know where she was, and she gave me full access to her email accounts. Furthermore, she consented to submit to an STD test and committed to attending therapy sessions. She truly wanted to rebuild what we had lost, and I could see the genuine regret in her actions. Every day, she worked hard to show me that she was willing to change, and for a while, it felt like our relationship was making progress. Yet, despite her best efforts and the many steps taken to restore trust, the damage had already been done. The images and memories of the explicit videos haunted me constantly. I could not forget the details: the unprotected sex, the way he was described as being well endowed, and the explicit acts she performed with him that she had always refused to try with me. The stark contrast between the intimacy we had shared in our marriage and the passionate, almost enthusiastic encounters she had with him made the pain even worse. I felt degraded, humiliated, and unable to compete with the excitement she experienced with this other man. The specific acts she engaged in, with him wearing different lingerie, giving enthusiastic oral sex, performing anal sex, and even swallowing his semen, were particularly painful to me. These were acts I had once proposed as something we might explore together, and she had always dismissed them as gross or degrading. Now, to see her embrace those very acts with another man, with such apparent enthusiasm, shattered my self-esteem completely. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have ever imagined, leaving me with a constant reminder of what I perceived as my inadequacy. Over time, despite her heartfelt apologies and continuous efforts to mend our relationship, the memory of her betrayal remained a dark shadow over our lives. Every time I looked at her, I saw not only the woman I had once loved dearly, but also the painful reminder of my own perceived shortcomings. The more I tried to rebuild trust, the more I felt that trust could never fully heal the deep wounds. The intimacy that we once enjoyed began to suffer, as the shadow of the affair made every sexual encounter feel forced and lacking genuine passion. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I found myself in a constant battle with feelings of resentment and self-doubt. The image of her with him was burned into my mind, and no matter how hard I tried, I could not escape it. My questions about my own worth, my masculinity, and my ability to satisfy her continued to haunt me. I began to wonder if it was fair to either of us to try and force our way back into a relationship that had been so deeply scarred by betrayal. In the midst of all this, I started to ask myself if our relationship could ever return to the way it was before, or if the memory of that night and the explicit details of her affair would always linger. I felt torn between the love we once shared and the overwhelming pain that came from knowing that she had chosen another man to experience what we had promised to share together. It was a constant struggle between wanting to forgive and forgetting, between holding on to the past and trying to build a future together. I kept searching for answers, hoping that one day I would understand why she had done it. But every time I asked her, her answer was always the same, a simple, "I don't know." That answer only deepened my confusion and sorrow. I could not help but feel that I was somehow lacking, that my physical presence or my way of loving was not enough for her. This thought made me question my identity and made the journey towards healing even more painful. Now, as I continue to live with this heartache, I remain uncertain about the future of our marriage. My wife continues to show her love and remorse, taking every step possible to regain my trust. Yet I find myself trapped by the memories of that betrayal. The once warm and loving relationship we built now feels overshadowed by the painful details of an affair that I cannot forget. I write this story not as a way to cast blame solely on her, but as an honest reflection of my feelings and the immense hurt that has come from this betrayal. I want to understand if it is fair to keep trying to work things out when the pain still feels so raw. I ask myself, and I ask anyone who might read this, if there is a way to truly heal when the memories of the betrayal are so vivid. Can love and trust ever be fully restored when such a deep wound has been inflicted? Or is it better to acknowledge that some betrayals change us forever? The answer remains elusive. I am still searching for a way to move past the memory of that night and the explicit acts that have left me feeling so inadequate. My wife, despite her constant efforts and love, may never be able to completely erase the hurt that now defines so much of our relationship. Yet, a part of me still hopes that, in time, we might find a way back to the intimacy and understanding we once had, a love that is free of doubt and pain. In the end, I am left with a difficult choice: to continue trying to rebuild what has been broken, or to let go of the past and seek a future where the wounds may finally begin to heal. The journey ahead is uncertain, filled with both the possibility of renewed love and the risk of unending hurt. All I know is that the betrayal has changed me in ways I never expected, and only time will tell if our love can survive the scars that remain. I threw her dildos over the balcony. Because she cheated. About 12 years ago, I made a big change in my life. I moved in with my girlfriend, a decision we reached after dating for only 8 months. We were both unhappy with our home lives at the time, and we could afford a nice apartment together. We decided to take a chance and move in, thinking that a new start would help us both. At first, everything seemed to be going well. We enjoyed the excitement of living together and the freedom of making our own decisions about how we lived. But after a few months, I began to notice little things that made me feel uneasy. My girlfriend started acting in ways that I found suspicious. One thing that caught my attention was how she always kept her phone with Hirsch, would even tuck it into her pocket while sleeping. At first, I thought nothing of it, since many people are protective of their privacy. However, it soon became clear that this behavior was part of a bigger pattern. Our work schedules were very different. I worked overnight shifts, and she worked during the day. This meant that I would often leave for work and rarely see or speak to her throughout the day. Even though I could text her during my long, quiet hours at work, her responses were minimal and sometimes delayed. This lack of communication made me increasingly suspicious. I remembered that I had experienced similar situations in the past, and my gut feeling told me that something was not right. I decided to investigate a little further. Since my girlfriend used my computer frequently, she didn't have one of her own. I secretly installed a different messenger program on it. I believe it was Pigeon because I was using Ubuntu at the time, and I thought she wouldn't know about it. I hoped this program would log any messages she sent while using my computer. I didn't tell her about it because I wanted to be sure of what was happening without her knowing I was watching. Before long, my suspicions were confirmed. I discovered that she was flirting with other guys very intensely. The messages were clear and straightforward. Although I didn't find any evidence that she had physically cheated on me, the emotional betrayal hurt just as much. I felt betrayed and confused, especially since she never showed any signs of this behavior before. One night, while I was working my overnight shift, I mentioned my suspicions to my boss during a quiet moment at work. It was almost midnight, and we had a couple of hours before we needed to take any action for the night. My boss, sensing my distress, suggested that I drive home and see if she was there. He thought that if she wasn't at home, it might confirm that something was really off. With a heavy heart and a sense of dread, I decided to follow his advice. When I got home, I was not surprised to find that she was not there. I quickly sent her a text asking, "Hey, where are you?" Her reply came back almost immediately. The living room watching television. But when I looked around, I realized I was already in the living room. Confused, I called her again, and this time she claimed that she was at a friend's house. I knew this friend well, a guy who had always shown interest in Haran deep down. I suspected that she might have been there instead of her friend. The explanation didn't sit well with me, and I started to piece together the signs of her betrayal. A week later, the situation escalated further. My girlfriend went to a party with some of her friends and did not return home that night. I checked Facebook and saw that all her friends were online, sharing stories and pictures from the party. Yet, there was no sign of her. When she finally came home, she was acting extra sweet and loving, as if nothing had happened. I knew better than to believe that her behavior was genuine. It was just another way for her to cover up her lies and make me doubt my own feelings. The final, undeniable confirmation came on the same day. Our internet service had been acting up, and the charter technician came over to fix it. As the technician worked on our connection, my girlfriend went to give our dog a bath. This was unusual because she never left her phone behind. For a brief moment, she left her phone on the kitchen counter, a mistake that sealed her fate. I couldn't resist the temptation to take a look at her messages. The texts were explicit and left no room for doubt. The very first message I saw was addressed to a guy I didn't know, and it read, "Did you like it when I was on top?" It was followed by another message saying, "Next time we'll use toys." I remembered that she loved to include details about her favorite sexual positions and her interest in using various toys during sex. These messages confirmed everything I had feared. The betrayal was complete, and the evidence was right there on her phone. I turned to the charter technician, who was still busy fixing our internet, and I said, "Dude, you gotta go. I don't even care about the internet. I just found out this bitch cheated on me." The technician simply nodded and left shortly after. As soon as he was out the door, my anger took over completely. I can't remember every single detail of what happened next, but I know I lost control. I started yelling at her, and she tried to defend herself by saying it was wrong for me to look at her phone. There was no arguing with that she had crossed a line. In the heat of the moment, I shouted, "So next time you're going to use toys, huh?" Without thinking twice, I walked over to where she kept all her collection of dildos. She had about 3 or 4 of them. Overwhelmed by anger and betrayal, I grabbed them and carried them out to our second-story balcony. There, I hurled them off the balcony and into the field behind our apartment building. I felt that by getting rid of those items, I could somehow erase the pain of her betrayal. After that explosive act, I knew I couldn't stay any longer. I left the apartment and went to my car to try and calm down. I sat there for a long while, fighting the urge to speed away like a bat out of hell. Even as I drove away, I could see her later coming down to the field, walking slowly and picking up her dildos in plain view of all the neighbors. It was an incredibly surreal moment. She was trying to salvage something from the ruins of what we had once shared. At the time, I was overwhelmed by hurt and anger. I couldn't laugh or see any humor in what had happened. It was a moment of deep betrayal and emotional pain. However, as time has passed, I have learned to look back on that day with a mix of sadness and laughter. Now, when I remember the whole incident, I can't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. The way everything unfolded, from the secret phone messages to the outrageous act of throwing away her toys, seems almost like a scene from a bad movie. Yet, it is a story that has shaped my life and taught me some hard lessons about trust, love, and the importance of paying attention to the small signs before they become big problems. This story remains one of the most vivid memories of my pasta time, when I made a risky decision that ended in heartache, but also led me to understand more about myself and what I deserve in a relationship. Even though it was painful then, I now see it as a turning point, a moment that pushed me to move on and never settle for anything less than honesty and respect.
Found out my boyfriend is actually married with 2 kids. A year ago, I met a guy in the Navy who seemed like an absolute sweetheart. From the very beginning, he treated me better than anyone else ever had. He was thoughtful and kind away surprising me with flowers and small gestures that made me feel truly special. I couldn't help but be drawn to his gentle nature and the way he made me feel cared for. Over time, our relationship grew stronger. We spent many moments laughing, talking about our dreams, and simply enjoying each other's company. His warm personality made every day brighter, and I started to believe that I had finally found someone who truly understood me. Last weekend, I decided to visit him. I was excited to spend some quality time together, and we had a wonderful weekend full of fun, good conversations, and shared memories. Everything felt so genuine and promising. I returned home feeling happy and secure in our relationship, confident in the bond we had built over the past year. However, just 2 days after I got back, my world took an unexpected turn. While scrolling through Facebook, I received a friend request accompanied by a strange message. The message read, "Hello, I believe you and I have someone in common, and this person has probably told you a story, like I'm a crazy ex out for revenge, or some kind warning to not communicate with me because I say this because it's not the first time, which is why I'm contacting you like this, to avoid you being influenced by seeing my profile and ignore me. I'm not crazy, just passionate about not getting lied to, tricked, or cheated on. I noticed your interactions with Name here on Facebook, to my surprise, since he told me he deactivated his account. I also saw your texts and pics from this weekend, and I thought you should know he and I are not only in a relationship, we live together, we're married." Shocked and confused, I immediately called him. When he answered, I asked him who this mysterious girl was. Instead of giving me a clear answer, he told me not to respond to her message, and promised that he would call me once he got off work. I had a sinking feeling that he was going to try to spin the situation, insisting that the message was just a crazy ex's attempt to create drama. Later, I decided to reply to the message, and soon enough I began comparing stories with the sender. Her account confirmed several details that I had already been suspicious about. The more we talked, the clearer it became that something was very wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, and the reality of the situation hit me hard. I felt devastated, foolish, and utterly heartbroken. I was angry with myself for not noticing the signs earlier. I had been so caught up in the sweetness of his attention that I ignored the red flags. It turned out that the man I had grown to care for was not only married, but he had deceived me from the start. The weight of his lies was crushing, and I knew there was no way to salvage the relationship. I decided right then that I would cut all contact with him. The situation became even more complicated when I learned that the woman who sent the Facebook message was his wife. Throughout the day, I kept in touch with her, comparing stories and piecing together the truth. When he finally called me, he tried to twist everything, claiming that his marriage was none of my business. I was done listening to his excuses. I told him exactly what I felt and wished him ill, not wanting any more drama in my life. Later, when he tried to apologize with another call, I made it clear that I no longer wanted anything to do with him. In the end, I realized that I had been a fool for believing in a love that wasn't real. Despite the initial sweetness and the happy moments we shared, I learned a painful lesson about trust and deception. I am still angry and upset by how everything unfolded, but I know that cutting him out of my life is the only way to move forward. Now, I am focusing on healing and reminding myself that I deserve honesty, respect, and genuine love.